when Ripley disappeared on the nest, it was an action scene on the script, and I prefer to modify the scene to have this strange thing much more than Giger word.
Hey, Steve Franks, we have some big slime up here for Jonathan Lange.
The Viper Pit was important. I mean, it was important in terms of the story because it was something that we had never seen before, but it was always sort of in your mind, like, where would these aliens take Ripley if they ever got a hold of her?
Aliens in here. Thought I was going to be alone.
So we knew it was very important to come across with somebody that was terrifying. And what we ended up with was this large living landscape of a 20-foot by 20-foot set piece that basically came to life. It was all containing tentacles and tails of aliens and a couple of aliens in suits and dragging Ripley through it. And I think at one point we must have had probably 25 or 30 puppeteers underneath. In some cases they were people that were just under there holding part of the foam sculpture and moving it, undulating it to keep it alive. Some of them were actually puppeteers performing with a tentacle. I was in a suit.
So we're not using any facial functions on this, right? And we don't know what the movement is yet. But once you're in the placement, I was thinking if we can get you to sink down in with that kind of wiggling.
No, I didn't open up that slit because of what John Pierre said. So
all right.
I don't know if we want to try that now.
Okay. Maybe we'll get to placement first and get him to approve that. And we'll go from there.
And coming up through a hole and dragging her, and she was being lowered down on a lift. So there was a huge amount of motion and movement going on. And the saving grace there was that it could all happen. You could have all these separate pockets of movement. They didn't have to overlap. It was never one creature that was supposed to be delivering a performance. It was always about a lot of little pockets of living movement bringing this thing to life.
Technically, it was a big undertaking. We're not usually asked to create, in essence, to create sets.
Vinny?
Yes, sir.
Let me get Vinny placed here. Come with me, if you would. Watch, there's a bucket at your feet. All right. You got a big mound of stuff coming up.
And this was a 20 by 20 foot set that was a living sculpture. We went through our processes on a larger scale than we often do. Coordinating the puppeteers is always difficult when you have 25 or 30 puppeteers. It can always be a challenge to coordinate that. We sort of took our cues off of Sigourney because she was the focus of the scene, and everything else we were doing, while it was a background, was also a character in essence, and it symbolically showed her sinking into the world of the aliens. So we talked a little bit with her about what her emotions in the scene would be, and how do we sort of, time our rhythms to that. And these may be things that don't necessarily come across overtly on film, but in a subtextual level they are there. But it really worked. We were very pleased with it. Sigourney said she thought it was one of the most memorable images from any of the films. So we're happy about that. So all of these things, it's very, very difficult to say, boil it down to what are the one or two things we did to make any of these characters more alive, because it really is many, many things. And it's rare to have an opportunity to, on a film, to be able to explore the full potential of animatronics.
For the beginning of the movie, where it shows her successful cloning process, we had two replicas that were built, one of Ripley as a full-grown woman, and then one as a child of somewhere around 10 years old. And for the child, I had the idea that we should get some child photographs of Sigourney and work that look into it, so that even if psychologically the audience would be able to buy into certain features, because the idea was that the 10-year-old girl would move into a close-up, and then there would be a computer morph to the adult Ripley. So I thought, boy, that'd be a great, interesting thing, just in terms of the physical growth of a person, to see elements of a childhood Sigourney Weaver grow into an adult. So we had a lot of photographs that Sigourney sent us, and then we had casting find us a little girl who was somewhat close, and we did you know, body and head impression, and then we resculpted it. We took a copy of Sigourney's head that we had done from Alien 3, and again, resculpted the model's body, put Sigourney's head on top of it, and then finished it all off in a material that made it look like real human skin.
It's great, you know, this being the fourth film, we had molds of Sigourney's head, and we did clay presses into that, and we didn't have to put her through any more body casting. Got a body double in, cast her body, grafted the head on, you know, did the resculpting we needed, and then produced the body replicas in silicone, which were then airbrushed and detailed so that they look very realistic. And then in the computer, they did the morph between the two, and it was really almost such a gradual and subtle morph that you almost don't notice it until it's done, and then you realize what's happened. But it was really a very beautiful and subtle effect. And there's a number of those sort of small-scale effects in the film that we're very proud of.
When we did all of the aborted Ripley clones, we had a lot of freedom in determining what the stages would be of each one, and it was never meant to show a progression. There was never any relationship from one to the next, except that we did decide that it would be nice to show that with each successive attempt, that the results got further grown, you know, larger in size.
So the idea was, in discussing with this with Jean-Pierre, was that it was very important for us to feel the pathos for these clone characters. We needed to see that they were in pain, so that you felt that what the scientists were doing was clearly wrong.
You see, the reason that I'm impressed with Alex's work is sometimes he even puts his personal touch on it. He leaves his gum on whatever he's working on as a sort of signature thing. You see how the gum is sort of starting to turn black there, and it gives a sort of strange je ne sais quoi effect to the whole thing, which I think is amazing. He's just great.
Well, je ne sais quoi.
And then I think the number 7 clone was the most elaborate of them because it did involve a makeup on Sigourney.
When we did number 7, it was strictly to come up with something that was so visceral and so horrific that Ripley would be totally justified in ending its life.
That was a fun character to do. Again, because it was a character. It wasn't just simply a gag, but it was emotionally charged. I think it's my favorite scene in the film, where she confronts herself. But it was Sigourney coming up through a slant board. She was on a slant board, and her head was coming up through a hole in the table, and we blended a silicone body onto her that was mechanized, and it had. It was able to breathe. It had a sort of this distended, jiggly stomach.
And then bring it. I just grab it in the most practical way. I don't know what that is.
We had to make it so clear in such a short moment of time on screen that this thing should not be alive, that it shouldn't have to live another moment, so that Ripley, you know, killing it, she's giving it a better ending by killing it than to let it live and just stay alive.
Jean-Pierre had definite ideas about what the newborn should look like. He felt that it should lean a little more towards the human than towards the alien. At one point, there was a concept that it would have Sigourney's face, which is a very difficult thing to do because you're talking about a sort of a blending a horrific monster face with a beautiful woman's face. You either slide the beautiful woman towards the monster and it's no longer a beautiful woman, or you slide the monster towards the and it's no longer a monster. So and also we were very concerned that it not look like Syl in Species. Because it had just been done, so why go there? But I think what Jean-Pierre really wanted was to give it a little bit, edge it more towards a human. He wanted it to definitely have eyes because he wanted the expressiveness of the eyes. And he wanted it to be sympathetic, so that really guided much of the design of the newborn.
We had very nice sketches from Chris Cunningham, but it was impossible to build because the legs were so thin. You know, it was impossible because after you have to build the machine. And at the end, it was. Now I am a little bit disappointed about the newborn because we did some choices, because also he had to act. He had to play, he had to move and to give us some different expression.